Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode, we're talking about the Denver Broncos 2018 NFL Draft Class based on analytics. So in this video, we're going to go through all the draft picks that the Denver Broncos made, and we're going to look at how good they may fare based on how past players performed in various different production and athleticism metrics. And if you're new to the channel, new to the work that I do, all terms and definitions will be in the description. And with that stuff out of the way, let's get to the first pick of the draft, which is, of course, Bradley Chubb, edge out of North Carolina State. When you look at his production data, very, very solid, 75.18 in terms of solo tackle data, 91.54 in terms of sack data, and 98.72 in terms of tackle for loss data. Pretty much has all pro/Pro Bowl potential in terms of his production traits. And when you get to his athleticism data, 90.64 in terms of explosiveness, 93.72 in terms of speed, and 71.82 in terms of flexibility testing. Based on his athleticism testing, he looks more like a Pro Bowl edge rusher than an all-pro edge rusher, mainly because of his flexibility testing. I've done videos in the past about how his three-cone kind of takes him out of all-pro potential because of that particular issue with his athleticism testing. But still, very strong profile, very productive, very athletic, and I think has a very good shot to become a very good edge rusher long term, especially when you think about the Denver Broncos with guys like Von Miller and Derek Wolfe and all those other sort of players. So I think this is a good pick because he fits. He's a good addition to what they already have in many ways, and I think there's a chance he could hit Pro Bowl potential just because of the team that he's on in many ways. And then, of course, we get to Courtland Sutton, wide receiver at SMU. Based on his production data, 90.69 in terms of passing yards and market share production, which pretty much hits 5-time All-Pro, 3-time All-Pro, 3-time Pro Bowl, and long-term starting thresholds. When you look at the averages at the position, he's kind of in between an All-Pro player and a Pro Bowl player, but still very good all-around production in general. And when you look at his athleticism traits, 83.08 in terms of explosiveness, 70.46 in terms of speed, and 97.44 in terms of flexibility. In many ways, Courtland Sutton is very similar to Alshon Jeffrey. Very similar production traits coming out, very similar athleticism traits. I think Courtland Sutton may not be as good as Alshon Jeffrey, just because Alshon Jeffrey played at a higher level competition. Alshon Jeffrey is a guy that was coming from the SEC in terms of his production data, whereas Courtland Sutton is playing at SMU. But I still think that Courtland Sutton again has great athleticism traits, very good production traits, and could end up becoming a long-term starter for them at worst in many ways when it comes to Courtland Sutton. And of course, we get to Royce Freeman, running back out of Oregon. Based on his production data, 80.25 in terms of his market share production, which pretty much hits above the 5-time Pro Bowl threshold and 3-time Pro Bowl threshold. Doesn't quite hit the All-Pro threshold, but again, pretty decent production all around. When you look at the averages at the position, doesn't quite hit the All-Pro average, but does hit above the Pro Bowl average and starter average. And when you look at his athleticism traits, pretty fantastic. 81.82 in terms of explosiveness, 84.74 in terms of speed, and 96.13 in terms of flexibility for his size. Pretty much has all Pro Bowl athleticism traits to go with Pro Bowl production. So I think in many ways, Royce Freeman has a very, very good shot to become a multiple Pro Bowl running back, to at least long-term starting running back based on his overall draft profile. And of course, we get to Isaac Yiadom, cornerback out of Boston College. When you look at his data, he had a 64 solo tackle score and a 37.57 pass deflection score. The solo tackle data does hit above the All-Pro average, All-Pro threshold, excuse me, but the pass deflection data is the only sort of major question mark here. Very, very low pass deflection data. When we look at the average All-Pro pass deflection score and average Pro Bowl pass deflection score, it's really, really low, which is a big question mark here. And when you look at the athleticism traits, 28.58 in terms of explosiveness, 34.10 in terms of speed, and 58.84 in terms of flexibility for his size. Doesn't quite have All-Pro potential or Pro Bowl potential athleticism traits, more so closer to a starter. And when you look at the average athleticism traits for an All-Pro player, for a Pro Bowl player, and for a starter player, he's woefully below what those averages are. So I think in many ways when we're looking at Isaac Yiadom, this is kind of one of the first picks that kind of looks like a dud, but we'll definitely see what happens long-term with him. Then, of course, you get to Josie Jewell, linebacker out of Iowa. When you look at his production data, 89.87 in terms of solo tackle data. Very, very close to the All-Pro average, but does hit at least above the Pro Bowl average score when you look at his overall data. And when you look at his athleticism traits, this is the main sort of question mark with him. 45.88 in terms of explosiveness, 23.71 in terms of speed, and 79.34 in terms of flexibility for his size. Very good flexibility testing, but his explosion and speed score doesn't hit anywhere near where it needs to hit in terms of all-pro potential, unpro bowl potential in terms of the bottom end thresholds. So I think Josey Jewell has a chance to become a long-term starting linebacker because of his production traits and because of his flexibility testing, but definitely kind of a long shot to become an all-pro/Pro Bowl player because of his lack of explosiveness and lack of speed for the position. Then, of course, we get to Shawn Hamilton, wide receiver out of Penn State. When you look at his production data, 43.06 in terms of his passing yardage market share production, which doesn't hit the 5-time All-Pro, 3-time All-Pro, 3-time Pro Bowl, or long-term starting areas of the position, which is concerning. And when you look at the average scores here, this kind of makes it even worse. Again, the average starter score is 81.45, and he's well below that average. So in many ways, Shawn Hamilton has very, very poor production data, but does have some good athleticism traits, 51.23 in terms of explosiveness, 59.32 in terms of speed, and 80.35 in terms of flexibility. I think when you look at Shawn Hamilton, you're looking at a guy that has all-pro/Pro Bowl potential athleticism without the all-pro/Pro Bowl production to go with it, let alone starter production. So Hamilton could become a fringe kind of contributor on this team because of his athleticism traits, but I would bet more so on Sutton becoming a long-term starter than Hamilton when you look at his production data. Of course, we get to Troy Fumagalli, tight end out of Wisconsin. When you look at his production data, 81.59 passing yards market share production score, which hits above the All-Pro threshold and Pro Bowl threshold when it comes to the position. And we look at the averages at the position, he pretty much hits the close to the Pro Bowl average and above the starter average in terms of production data. Big question marks for Troy Fumagalli is what is his athleticism testing? He didn't really do any athleticism testing because he was injured during the process, so we don't really have much else to project here, but he definitely has good production data. So we'll see what happens with him, but there definitely are some questions in terms of projection because of that lack of athleticism testing. And of course, we get to Sam Jones, offensive guard out of Arizona State. When you look at his athleticism testing, he had a 14.82 explosive lower body strength score, 17.79 speed score, and 16.76 flexibility score, well below the All-Pro average and Pro Bowl average when it comes to the position, and barely squeaks above the starter average, the starter threshold when it comes to the position. And when you look at the averages, nowhere near the average All-Pro score, Pro Bowl score, even starter score when it comes to the position. So Sam Jones is someone that I think is very unlikely he becomes a long-term starter, even though he did hit at least above the bottom end threshold. Again, that's the bottom end threshold. That's like the lowest of the low. So we'll see what happens with Sam Jones, but I think it's very unlikely that he becomes a long-term starter because of how poor his athleticism testing is. Then, of course, we get to Keshawn Blaylock, linebacker out of Washington. When you look at his production data, 49.12 in terms of solo tackle data, does not hit the All-Pro threshold, Pro Bowl threshold, but does hit at least above the starter threshold, but is still very, very far away from the starter average score when it comes to solo tackle data. And when you look at his athleticism testing, 25.17 in terms of explosiveness, 29.12 in terms of speed, and 45.68 in terms of flexibility testing. Does not have All-Pro/Pro Bowl athleticism traits, does hit at least above the starter threshold, but doesn't even look close to the starter averages in terms of athleticism. I think in many ways, Keshawn is someone that just doesn't have the production or athleticism traits in order to translate at the NFL level, and is one of those picks I just see as kind of a dud in this particular draft class. Then, of course, we get lastly to David Williams, running back out of Arkansas. When you look at his production data, 30.68 in terms of market share production, doesn't quite hit the All-Pro threshold, 5-time Pro Bowl threshold, or 3-time Pro Bowl threshold in terms of his production. These, of course, are the averages. Again, very, very low compared to what the averages are. And when you look at his athleticism testing, 34.91 in terms of explosiveness, 82.10 in terms of speed, and 16.15 in terms of flexibility testing. I think when you look at David Williams, in general, you're looking at a guy that's most likely going to be a rotational back to backup, or may not even be on the team in a couple years. Again, we'll see what happens with him, but not the strongest of profile. Overall, when you look at the Denver Broncos draft class, I think this is a pretty solid class. I think the first 3 picks of the draft are home runs to a certain extent. Bradley Chubb, very good chance of becoming a long-term successful player. Courtland Sutton, very good chance to become a high-quality, long-term successful player. Royce Freeman, same difference. I think that some picks like Isaac Yandam, Shawn Hamilton, Sam Jones, Keshawn Blaylock, and David Williams, those are picks that I just don't see panning out long-term based on the overall data and how players in the past perform. Successful players in the past perform. So I think those guys are guys that I just don't really see a lot of success for them long term. But I do think that the first 3 picks of the draft will kind of make up for some of those mistakes that were made later on. But let me know in the comment section below, how do you believe the Denver Broncos draft class turned out? And of course, my name is James Coburn. You can find my other work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Gymmetrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well with anybody that you know. Hit that notification button so you're always reminded when another video of mine drops. And I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace!